Your number one key performance indicator at the end of the day is the value of your law firm, is the enterprise making money. In service businesses, that is the ultimate baseline of the value of your firm, because all present value is derived from, Bill, why do you want to grow top line revenue? Wouldn't you rather run a business that profits $500,000 a year and does $1 million a year with less employees and less headaches? And, instead of running a business that does $10 million a year and profits the same amount? And I said, hell no, because what that means is a bigger business is. Welcome to another episode of the Law Firm Growth Accelerator podcast. This week, we're not doing a live talk show because we are running our big 3-day virtual event. So I wanted to put out a short and sweet podcast just so that we kept putting something out this week on the topic of enterprise value is your law firm's number one KPI. Your number one key performance indicator at the end of the day is the value of your law firm. Whether you intend to sell or whether you intend to never sell your law firm, the value of your law firm from a financial perspective is the number one KPI, right? It's the number one thing to reverse engineer from, and it's the number one thing that you're in essence responsible for as CEO of your law firm. Okay, so let's look at 8 key drivers of enterprise value or company value. The first is obviously going to be financial performance. So if you have a history of producing consistent revenue and profit combined with professionalism within your bookkeeping, right? So for example, someone with audited financials is typically better than someone with unaudited financials. Someone who has a credible bookkeeper is going to be typically having better financials than someone without a credible bookkeeper. Someone whose revenues are not consistent is going to be less value than someone whose revenues are consistent. Someone whose profits aren't consistent, going to be less value than someone whose are consistent. So financial performance is probably one of the simplest measures of enterprise value, because it literally just comes down to whether or not your law firm is making money, right? Is the enterprise making money, right? Because that is the ultimate, in service businesses, that is the ultimate baseline of the value of your firm, because all present value is derived from future expected cash flows, right? So if your business is making no money now, then the expectation is that your business will make nothing in the future, and therefore your law firm is not worth anything, right? Unless, of course, there's strategic benefits like your SEO or something else that someone would want to buy that has intrinsic value other than your firm. So financial performance is one of the first pillars, okay? And John Warillo, who I interviewed in the past, I have a video interview with myself and him on our YouTube channel from years ago. He wrote the book Built to Sell. He talks about some of these concepts in that book. And again, I want to say this. Building to sell does not mean you sell. It means you're building a healthy business. A sellable business is a healthy business. And a valuable business is your ultimate KPI as to the measure of how good of a business leader you are. Okay. Growth potential. Your likelihood to grow your business in the future and at what rate, right? So if you are in an industry that is growing slower than GDP, your growth potential is lower than someone who's in an industry that's growing faster than GDP. Very simple, right? So if GDP is growing 5% year over year and your industry is only growing 2% year over year, your industry is growing 3% slower than GDP, as an example. So that tax down your growth potential. Your growth potential tax down. Also, if you have not proven growth in the past, right? If your firm has grown 5% year over year for 3 years in a row, and then you all of a sudden, try to prove to a potential investor that next year you're going to grow 80% or 100%, right? Double your revenues, but history only shows you've grown 5%, then you're not going to have as valuable of a law firm, right? And it's going to ultimately harm your multiple, right? Because the way that firms are valued is typically an EBITDA multiple. That's the most common way that law firms are valued is, a EBITDA, which is a net profit number, is determined for your business, right? Which is revenue minus all expenses, adjusted for any unusual one-time expenses, excessive owner's compensation, et cetera, et cetera. That ends up being your net profit number. Your net profit gets multiplied by a multiple, right? For law firms, typically the range of multiple is anywhere from 1x to 6x. Very, very rare that you'll find any law firm trading at over a 6x multiple, just because typically law firms don't have recurring revenue. Most law firms are not rapidly growing, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of them are owner dependent. There's a ton of reasons, but it's a relatively low multiple industry, right? So you want to do everything you can to get that multiple as high as you possibly can. Growth potential is going to get that higher. The Switzerland structure, which is basically how dependent your business is on any one employee, customer, or supplier. So that's basically, you want very limited dependence on any one thing in your law firm, right? So you want less than 5% of your entire company's revenues to come from one client or one customer, right? You don't want your business heavily dependent on any one employee like you. You don't want your business dependent on any one thing, right? Advertising channel, et cetera. You want diversification. That's going to increase your multiple. That's also going to probably assist in you being more profitable. In the case that one of the things that you're currently doing don't work or stop working, you always have backup plans. So diversification is one of the other critical elements. Another critical element is your gross profit. Your gross profit, yes, having a high gross profit business actually impacts your net profit, right? Your gross profit you look at as revenue from cases minus the cost of handling the cases directly, right? In a hot dog business, okay, a gross profit is the dollar amount you receive for the hot dog minus the cost of the hot dog itself minus the labor cost of producing the cooked hot dog, right? So let's say you get $1 for a hot dog and it costs you 50 cents to buy that hot dog plus 10 cents in labor to cook that hot dog. 50 plus 60 means 50 plus 10 equals 60% cost. That means you're spending 60 cents on every dollar for every hot dog that you sell. That would put your gross profit at 40% on just the cost of putting out a hot dog. When you subtract out sales and marketing expenses and overhead expenses, it's very likely that your hot dog stand would be at 0% net profit, depending on how much you're investing in those two areas. So most law firms, you want to be at 60% gross profit or higher. That means, if you look at this by division in your firm, that means, let's say your firm's bringing in $1 million a year in your PI business, right? You want to be spending no greater than 40% of that $1 million a year on actual attorney salaries and any of the directly related labor to producing your PI case results, right? So you want to spend no greater than 40% on the cost of actually handling the case per unit of revenue. That'll put you at 60% gross profit. The reason why gross profit is important is because this determines whether your business is a cash suck or a cash surplus, right? So if your business, if it's super costly for you to deliver services to clients, meaning every additional client you sign up, it actually isn't profitable for the company, then if you grow your business, it's actually going to make you less and less profitable. So when someone looks at your business, they're going to actually see, oh, if we add more clients to this business, the business is actually going to be in a worse case because the business is already spending way too much in attorney costs, and support staff costs to handle these cases. If that projects through the future, and we go from spending 10% on marketing to 25% on sales and marketing, the company is going to be at a net loss. Therefore, the business is worth nothing. So you want to make sure that your business has a great gross profit so that when you add more clients, your business becomes more profitable, not less profitable. One great business example of this that's a super high gross margin business is software companies, right? If you add like Facebook as an example, when Facebook was scaling, if you add 1,000 customers to Facebook, the cost for Facebook doesn't really increase per customer because the cost of the software itself is pretty fixed, right? So like that is a cash surplus business, right? Where every additional customer you sign up, client, costs you less money. Next one is recurring revenue. This is very rare in law firms, but this is a huge valuation element, right? People want predictability in future revenues, right? If your entire business is built upon one-time transactions, right? Maybe a certain number of those one-time transactions, repeat purchase from you or whatever, then you're going to get a lower multiple than a law firm that has somehow, some way created a recurring revenue model, because recurring revenue allows an investor to attach expectations to future revenue at a higher certainty rate, right? So a business that has recurring revenue, it's much more likely that your business is going to get a high multiple because there's a little bit more certainty that the current revenues you're generating will continue into the future. I know for us, this was a big reason that we got a very high multiple for our business when we got it valued by a third party, is because our entire business is recurring revenue. Almost every single thing that we do is recurring revenue. Next one is basically differentiation. How differentiated your business is, right? So if there are a million options for people to choose from in comparison to your law firm, then you have a commodity business. If you are the only option for people to buy from, then you are a monopoly business, right? You always want to be closer to the monopoly level, right? So an example of this is Google, right? How many choices do you have for a search engine, right? Let's fast forward this to ChatGPT. ChatGPT has become like the hub for conversational AI, right? It's close to that monopoly status, right? But if you look at search engines, Google has been the clear winner for since really its inception. After Ask Jeeves kind of died down and Yahoo died down, Google ended up being the clear winner, right? And it's been in a monopoly state for a long period of time because people who use search engines, they don't really have many plan Bs out there, right? There's DuckDuckGo, but there's not many plan Bs. So if there is a million family law attorneys in your local market and you're just one of them, then you're a commodity business. If there's only 10 family law businesses in your market, and you're less of a commodity business, you're closer to the scale, you're closer on the monopoly side than you are on the commodity side, right? Than if you had a million competitors. So the key here is to really differentiate your offering. So, you can mix and match services to create a monopoly environment, even if any one of your services are not standalone a monopoly. So example, with our business, we're the only company in the legal industry that offers 360-degree growth services with full service marketing, fractional CFOs, fractional COOs, our elite coaching program, and bookkeeping all under one umbrella. And the positioning of that to the marketplace has been partially why our company has grown, is because we're the only people offering what we're offering. Now, are there services within our portfolio of services that are less competitive and more competitive? Absolutely. Our marketing agency is the most competitive. There are 1,000,001 marketing agencies for lawyers. There's not that many fractional CFO businesses for lawyers, right? So we're closer to the monopoly level for that category of service for us. There's not many fractional COO services for lawyers, right? So we're closer to the monopoly level for that. There is many bookkeeping services out there, right? So that's a little bit more on the commodity side. So parts of your business, you always want to have a part of your business that's high volume and more on that commodity side, but you also want to have a part of your business that's high value add and very hard to find a replacement for. And our coaching program, all of our coaching services, that including our fractional executive services, is more on that monopoly side. Customer satisfaction. This is another very important one. How often do your clients repurchase? How often do they refer clients to you? What do they give you in net promoter score surveys? How often do they pay their bills in full? All of these are metrics of customer satisfaction. If you have built a business with super high customer satisfaction, chance is going to be that your business is worth more than a business that is less focused on customer satisfaction, because mathematically, customer satisfaction is a big indicator of future revenue, repeat purchases, referrals, which is a big lever on the certainty of future anticipated revenues, right? So being able to prove that for every 5 clients you get 1 referral, being able to prove that your average client, buys from you or comes back to your law firm X number of times, that's going to improve your law firm's multiple, because that's going to improve the certainty of the future value that a potential investor would get from your firm. And last but not least is, how would your business perform if you were unexpectedly unable to work? So this is owner dependence as a category. And it's an important category because you are not necessarily replaceable, right? If the business were to transact, this is why oftentimes when people buy businesses, they want the CEO to stay on, because it's very hard to replace the leader of an organization. So if your business would basically not work, if you were absent for a period of under 3 months, then there's a problem from an owner dependence standpoint. So you always want to at least hit that 3-month mark, because that's a sign that an entire quarter can go by with limited involvement from you. And that's one of the big measurements that people look for when it comes to enterprise value. So let's say you have like super great profits. Let's say your law firm's profiting $1 million a year, right? But it's determined that you have no growth potential. You're very dependent on one client's revenues. Your business is a cash suck, meaning if you sign up any more clients, you're going to become less profitable. You have no recurring revenue. You're just a commodity service. Your customers aren't satisfied. And if you were to unexpectedly leave, the entire business would shut down. Okay. Well, you'd be lucky to get a 1x multiple on that business, even though you're profiting $1 million a year. Most investors would look at that and they would say, okay, well, your business is worth 1 year earnings, right? 1 year, 1 times, 1x multiple. Let's say that your business is only profiting $500,000 per year, but you have high growth potential. You have limited dependence on any one client. Your business is a cash surplus business. When you sign up more clients, it's more profitable. You have recurring revenue. You are in the monopoly category, which means you're one of one in your market. Your customers are super satisfied, and if you were unexpectedly gone, your business would run with no problems for over 3 months. Well, you may only be profiting $500,000 a year, but your law firm is worth, let's say, a 5x multiple, right? Because of all these other benefits that your firm has, right? 500,000 times 5 is $2.5 million. Think about that. So a law firm that's profiting $1 million a year that gets a 1x multiple is worth $1 million enterprise value. A law firm that's doing $500,000 a year in profit but hits these other metrics, 500,000 times 5x multiple, that law firm is worth $2.5 million, right? So it's possible to profit less and have a better run business with more growth potential and to actually be more wealthy and have a higher net worth from your law firm's value than someone who's just hoarding profit, making the entire business dependent upon themselves and not building a scalable business. So this is a really tough thing to decide on as a law firm owner is what am I optimizing for, right? Am I optimizing for short-term gains or long-term legacy level wealth, right? And what I've noticed in looking at hundreds of firms and the hundreds of firms we work with is that oftentimes the best run businesses that get the highest multiples also provide the owner tremendously more freedom, I'll say. So imagine that you run the $1 million firm that has a 1x multiple, right? And because everything depends on you in that business and you're profiting $1 million a year, well, you have to work 85 to 90 hours a week, okay? So let's say you have to work 85 to 90 hours a week in order to earn the $1 million a year that you get in net profit from your firm, okay? Now, the second person, let's say they profit $500,000 a year, but they only have to work 10 hours a week to produce $500,000 a year in net profit, okay? So think about that. Which life would you prefer to have? Would you prefer to have the life where you're working 10 hours a week, making 500 grand a year in profit on top of your base salary? Or would you rather have the life where you're working 80, 90 hours a week and making $1 million in profit? Well, mathematically speaking, if you look at your hourly rate and you compare this, I don't know where my phone is, but it's right here. Look, if you look at your hourly rate and you divide the law firm owner who's working 90 hours a week divided by $1 million, okay, that law firm owner is so $1 million, so 90 times 52, that's 46. Let's do 90 times 50 hours a week, or 50 weeks. 90 hours a week times 50 weeks. 4,500 hours divided by $1 million. That law firm owner who's making $1 million a year is really only making $222 an hour, okay? The other law firm owner who's working 10 hours a week times 50 weeks is only working 500 hours per year, okay? And they're making $500,000. And I said 10 times that's 500. So that law firm owner is $1,000 per hour in their effective hourly rate, right? So 200 versus 1,000, that means that the other law firm owner making $500,000 a year in profit is 5 times more valuable per hour of output than the law firm owner making $1 million a year because their time is more effective. Their law firm is running itself more. I remember when I first started my company, I had an accountant ask me, like, Bill, why do you want to grow top line revenue? Why wouldn't you rather run a business that profits $500,000 a year and does $1 million a year with less employees and less headaches? And instead of running a business that does $10 million a year and profits the same amount? And I said, hell no, because what that means is a bigger business is I can have more resources to do the things I'm bad at so that I can actually have some freedom and enjoyment from what I do on a weekly basis, right? So understand that if enterprise value is your number one metric, if that's your number one KPI, if that's what you hold yourself accountable to as the CEO of your law firm, then you're going to make decisions that make yourself replaceable, that make your clients and customers happier, that make your revenue more predictable, right? That make your growth more predictable. And all of these things are going to benefit your personal freedom. And they're going to also simultaneously increase your profits, give you more predictability around your profits, and probably just overall not just improve your quality of life, but improve your net worth as a result. But most importantly, that blend of work and life you'll find at the intersection of enterprise value, of working backwards from enterprise value. Now, let's say something happens in your life where you do have to step down or you do eventually want to sell your firm, right? Imagine having the option of selling your firm for $50 million cash, right? Now, most law firm owners will never have that option because they're not building valuable businesses, right? So let's say you get sick or you want to step down or your passions change, your mind changes, you want to focus your life in a different direction. If you haven't reverse engineered from enterprise value, you have no choice but to basically close up shop because no one's going to pay you for your law firm, or they're not going to pay you an amount that's sexy enough to get you excited about it, right? So my belief wholeheartedly is that business owners and law firm owners have to focus on enterprise value as their core metric, as their number one focus as to what they hold themselves accountable for in terms of growing the firm. So if you do that, I can almost guarantee that you're going to start making smarter decisions. You're going to start working a little bit less because you're going to become more efficient and effective in your per hour use of time. And you're going to look back over your firm as you start using this focus, and you're going to realize how much bigger and more impactful decisions you've made by taking this analytical, numbers-based, value-based approach to really thinking through how you solve the issues and opportunities that pop up every single week in your law firm. So hope you got value from this episode. Wanted to put something out since we're running the event. And my one thing is focus on enterprise value as your number one KPI. I'll see you in the next episode. Stay great. If you found value in this podcast, here's one way I can help your firm right now. What if you could take all of our knowledge and experience helping law firms grow and use it to create a custom growth plan for your firm? I want to give you something special. I want to give you a free law firm 360-degree analysis. We usually charge $499 for this call, but you'll get it for free since you're committed to growth. Our team will walk you through the 4 steps of the law firm growth acceleration model and give you opportunities and fixes to grow your firm faster based on what we've learned across hundreds and hundreds of the fastest growing law firms in North America. Go to smbteam.com/360 to get your free analysis today.